Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Mark Wing podcast. My name is Ellis. I'm a solicitor at Lawdit, and today you join us in our Isle of Wight office. And I'm joined today by Mark Reed, solicitor. Good morning. Good afternoon, Mark.
I mean, you're still saying good afternoon, Ellis, but it's in actual fact the morning, you see, because we're sat here in our lovely sunny Isle of Wight office, and it is only 10:30. So, good morning to you, Ellis.
Time flies when you're having fun. Good morning, Sam. We're also joined by Sam, our trainee solicitor. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Ellis.
Today, I wanted to have a chat with you both and just sort of tie our listeners in to just have a general chat about wills, an introduction to why you should have a will, why it's important to get a will drafted by a solicitor rather than just sort of a random template online, and also any other sort of elements you need to think about in terms of if you already have a will, where is it stored, that sort of thing. So general will chat today. So first things first, what is a will? A will is a document that you prepare while you're still alive, and it details what you want to happen to your estate after you pass away. So whether that's property that you own, actual physical sort of chattels, cash, anything like that, what do you want to do with it once you pass away, and who do you want to be in charge of that also? So a will is really important basically to make sure you have control. You know exactly what's going to happen with what you've got when you're gone, and you know who's going to be in charge. So really important thing to think about is those people that are going to be in charge, known as your executors. The executors needs to be people that you trust, and also make sure that they are of a mindset where they can sort of deal with these things properly. It's a very stressful thing, isn't it, Mark, when you have a will and you need to execute your estate?
I sit with clients quite often, and they feel they've got all the answers before they've turned up, and then by the time they've left, they've been left with lots more questions that they need to go away and answer. And usually the biggest one is the executors, just simply because we always start off by, feeling in our head, I'm going to have those two people. They may have asked those two people, they met three people, but they might not have asked them. They then sit there with us and we say, well, yeah, but that person may be, respectfully, they may be elderly. So therefore, if you're going to draft a will, you'd like it to be a will that is the last will and testament. So therefore, it's going to be with you for many, many years, potentially decades. So instead of having to then change your will down the line, some people reconsider that and say, that's a really good point. Maybe it would be better to use someone that's a bit younger. Equally, the executor, as Ellis said, they have to be capable of being able to, administer the estate correctly. Now that involves, control and organisation, and certainly from a financial perspective, being able to distribute as per the wishes of the estate.
Yeah, I think it's important that one of the main benefits, and I'll sort of go into that in terms of having a solicitor draft your will rather than just doing it yourself, is you are really future-proofing that document to make sure that all of the ifs and buts have been asked and have been accounted for as much as possible, and like Mark said, making sure that that is your last will and testament, and it's as future-proof as you possibly can. Now, Sam, I want for you to jump in here. What happens when a person doesn't have a will?
Well, if you pass and you do not have a will, it will come under the rules of intestacy, which is when a person passes without a will or without a valid will. And under the rules of intestacy, there is a list of persons who will essentially inherit your estate. So if you are a married person or you have a civil partner, then your spouse will come first in line, and if you have a spouse only and no children, essentially all your estate would pass to your spouse. If you also have children, your spouse would take a statutory legacy, which is a set amount of money. They will also take all the personal chattels, possessions, and then whatever is left after that will be divided equally between the spouse and the children. And then if there's no spouse or children, we start moving further down the list.
Yeah, you sort of move to then sort of family members, don't you? brothers, sisters, and it goes down and down and down in that line in terms of an order. So yeah, the intestacy rules are there as a backup, and are there as a framework to account for those situations where wills aren't present. But it may be that actually you want to gift something to your best friend of 50 years. You want to make sure that other family members are accounted for within your estate. You want to give things to charity. You want to do this, you want to do that, and that just isn't accounted for within the intestacy rules.
Or you may be a person that does not believe in marriage, and you may have had a long-term relationship where you're not married, you're not in a civil partnership, but you still want to ensure that that person, if you were to pass before them, is to inherit, which they would not under the intestacy rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue potentially that the intestacy rules haven't been modernised to sort of reflect that situation. I think we see a lot of circumstances now where people don't get married, and those sorts of frameworks that have been in place for a long time don't reflect that.
I will just add, though, not to bore everyone, but there are cases where we've actually got case law that says that there are circumstances whereby someone has successfully been able to say that they are, for want of a better word, the next of kin, the person that should inherit through the case law. But of course, it means that you've got to go through an awful lot from the court's perspective to be able to satisfy that. Otherwise, as both Ellis and Sam said, that's not going to be the case. So we'll go back to wills now. So Ellis, you start off by saying executors. Now I'm thinking in my head, well, I work down the will. So we've got our own templates in our head as to how we deal with things. Mm-hmm. So what would be next on the on the will in terms of drafting for our listeners to consider in terms of making decisions?
So really the next massive decision is beneficiaries. Who's going to benefit from your will and in what proportion? So do you want to gift a beneficiary a certain item, a certain property, or a certain amount of money, or are you going to sort of split up your residual estate? So everything is melted into a pot that's then split between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, whether that's people that are over the age of 18 or children. That's something we can factor in terms of putting things in trusts potentially, but they're the two major things you need to think about: who's going to administer the estate and who's going to benefit, and in what way are they going to benefit. How do you want your estate to be split up? That's all the sort of things that we can go through with you in a lot of detail to make sure that it's exactly how you wish it to be, unfortunately, when that sad time comes and your estate needs to be administered.
Okay. In terms of beneficiaries, I mean, there's a huge section on beneficiaries, and as you say, there may be specific gifts which you wish to, leave someone with. For example, I know that a family member of mine had some very old cars, like tiny little figurines that they wanted to gift as a specific gift because they were really, really old. They then changed their mind, even though their will has it drafted in there that they're being left to said person. They changed their mind and said, well, actually, I'd like to see said person play with these toys now while I'm alive, and I can actually see them play with it. So obviously that was a specific gift that was already, considered, even though they changed their mind. So just bear that in mind. Jewellery, any specific, something like a painting, anything that someone has said over the years, I really like that painting. You might think to yourself, well, actually, you know what? If you really liked it for so many years, I'm going to leave that to you in my will. Yeah. Which is different to the residual estate, which of course is everything left over. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be something of monetary value either. You don't always think about, my house, my car. Yeah. Sentimental value is really what specific gifts are all about. Normally it's that item, like Mark said, that people have admired over the years and that wouldn't necessarily be prominent. If someone was just to sort of look at your estate independently, they wouldn't see that being as important to that family member. So those are the sorts of things to really think about when you're drafting, to make sure that you're giving those things to the right people. Also, something I tend to add in a will when I'm drafting it isn't a requirement, because you can put them down. Let's just say that your will is sat in your safe. You can put down instructions to the executors within a letter, let's say. Others like to just have it all contained in the will so it's nice and neat. So it's good to start considering, I say good, sounds a terrible word, but it really is to get your affairs in order to ensure that your wishes are understood clearly. For example, how do you wish your burial to be? Do you wish
funeral
to be buried?
wishes.
Funeral wishes.
Yeah.
Do you wish to be buried? Do you wish to be cremated, etc.? Are there any specific points that you'd like to make in there? For example, it could be music. It could be many things that you think you'd rather deal with it all in one document rather than having to go away and then have a separate document that has to be drafted with it.
Yeah, it's important that while this obviously is a situation that no one really wants to think about, it's just important that this is your wishes. You want to make sure that you're in control of this, and if there is certain wishes that you have, that they are well known to the people that you love and who are going to administer your estate. So when that time comes, and obviously it's a very highly emotional time, everything's been prepared, everything's been planned, there's no sort of grey area, everything's really clear. So that's really sort of the main reason why to get your will sorted, get it done, get it sorted, and then everything's ready and waiting.
And of course, something that we won't, I think it goes beyond the scope of this podcast, but there are inheritance tax provisions which will need to be factored in. Independent advice may need to be sought if there are certain points within your estate that creep you over the threshold. Sam, can you recall what's the thresholds? What have we got before inheritance tax gets brought into it?
We have, each individual has a nil rate band, which is currently around £325,000 per person. And an important thing to remember, which is one benefit of being married amongst many benefits, is you can inherit your spouse's nil rate band. So if your spouse passes and everything moves to you, that is inheritance tax exempt. Any assets move in between spouses in that case, but you will also then receive their unused nil rate band, so then you'd end up with a nil rate band of £650,000 when you pass. There's also something called the residence nil rate band, which is £175,000 per person, and that's if a direct descendant is going to inherit your residential property from you. And again, you can inherit your spouse's unused resident nil rate band. So potentially, if everything moves from one spouse to another and then to children, for example, and there's a residential property that's going to go to the children, you could be potentially have up to £1 million, which wouldn't be liable for tax.
Well done. Very, very good, Sam.
Very good.
I threw you in at the deep end there and you smashed it. Well done.
So for most people, potentially you are falling within that nil rate band threshold, but it's really important that you seek that independent advice from a financial advisor just to make sure that that is correct and there's nothing that you can plan or prepare for to make that process easier for your executors to deal with. So I think we'll probably wrap that up there. We've given everyone quite a good summary of sort of the circumstances surrounding wills and what you need to know. If you want to get in touch to get your will sorted, or you have a will already and actually it needs to be updated or amended, then get in touch with us. We can have a chat through that with you, and we can then advise how best to move forward, either with drafting a new will or adding a codicil, which is a separate document that's attached that details amendments. Get in touch with Lawdit. Our website is www.lawdit.co.uk. You can drop us an email at info@lawdit.co.uk or give us a call on 02380 235 979, and one of the team will be in touch to talk with you further. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Ellis.
Thank you.
And tune in soon for some more podcasts.